Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you another video. Alright. Pausing breakfast as I often do these days. Listening to people talk about the draft. Listening to people talk about the Lakers and what they should do. It just kind of took me to a place where I had some things to consider. First of all, I don't think anything that I'm thinking right now has not been said. So bear with me. But the 3-star model specifically for the Lakers doesn't really work for me. And I was listening to somebody as they were talking about the Spurs and what they should do with their 2 picks. I think the Spurs should target 2-way players. The reason why the Boston Celtics, in my humble opinion, are up 3-0 in the finals with a chance to win the championship on tomorrow or Saturday, whatever it is because all of the players that they have are not only of high quality, based on some of them being drafted by the Celtics and others being acquired in good trades and stuff like that, but it's because everybody on the floor is 2-way. Everybody on the floor can provide you both equally defense and offense in some very, very a variety of ways. You can see that there's no chance you have it playing off of anybody on that Celtics floor, and because of it, everybody has space. Everybody can create space for others. It's just a very difficult path to overcome. And as I said many times, the Dallas Mavericks were able to benefit a great deal from the fact that Rudy Gobert is a one-way player. At certain players down there, you don't have to defend so hard. Even though they can provide something on both sides, they're not really savants or really huge threats on those sides. Like Mike Conley, for example, not a huge threat. Even though he can do a lot offensively, he's not going to necessarily do too much defensively, that kind of thing. So there's a lot to be said for targeting 2-way players if you're the Spurs with their 2 picks, and targeting 2-way players if you're the Lakers with our circumstance. I don't think we need anybody that can't space the floor at this point, especially without a coach in place. It looks like we're going to likely be providing J.J. Redick a interview on Saturday, I believe is what they said, right after the Game 4 of the finals, for which most people think the finals will be over. J.J. Redick will come in for a second formal interview. So that's like, maybe you can check that box and say they're going to hire J.J., which we all think they ultimately do anyway. But at this point, you got to understand that you don't have a system in place, and because of it, the best thing you can do for yourself is just bring yourself some plug-and-play players that create spacing for everybody. And benefit from having, make sure that the players that we have in superstars, Anthony Davis and LeBron James, are able to benefit from the guys that they're playing with in terms of spacing and defensive help. So I say the same thing when you're building from scratch. I was listening to a guy say he was going to take Stephen Castle and Rob Dillingham with the Spurs 2 picks if those guys would be available at that point. I love both of those players in this draft. I think they're both going to be really good. But Stephon Castle does not stretch the floor. He's considered a 2-way player because of the other things that he does on the offensive end, but the point is your spacing is going to be a little funny with him out there. Rob Dillingham is a shorter guy who, from what I understand, is not a savant defensively. Short player, probably going to be targeting a lot of situations. His best defense is his offense. I just don't think that's the right way to play when you're in this situation and you're trying to build from the ground up. You need to take from what the Celtics are doing and draft 2-way guys. One of the reasons why the Celtics are as good as they are is because their 2 main sources of cap space, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, are fantastic two-way stars. So if you're going to get somebody on a rookie contract and you're trying to build from the ground up, you need to make sure that the players that you're bringing in, that you're likely going to end up paying if they develop, are guys that are not difficult to build around, that guys can play in multiple situations. And if you bring in limited basketball players, you don't have that going on. You're going to have to find guys that ultimately fit with them rather than being able to put some of everybody around them. So that's how I'm looking at that Spurs situation. I don't know that I go that route. I mean, you love to have those 2 players, but when I think about what the Spurs are trying to do, which is build around Wemby, the guys you want on rookie contracts, the guys you want that have own their bird rights, are guys that are easy to bring things to, because those are your mainstays. So that's how I look at their situation. They probably do better taking people who can do both. So, as far as the Lakers are concerned, that, as I was saying, I was listening to someone talk about the 3-star model, and I just want to reiterate, it's going to likely equate to you leaning on lesser role players than you normally would if you went the depth route. That's not necessarily a perfect science, but probably 7 out of 10 times that's what you're going to end up finding yourself involved in. You're going to have 3 stars eating up most of your cap, and then you're going to fill out the rest of your cap with guys that you can find that will take less money, which means guys that are older, vet minimum guys that are not that sought after in the league, guys who likely haven't conditioned themselves to play big minutes because they've been role players. You're not going to find your bang for your buck in most situations. Maybe you luck out and get a couple players like that, but if they're not already in place, trying to find them after bringing yourself the 3-star model doesn't work. And again, we reference the Boston Celtics. They have superstars up and down the starting lineup. But what do they also have? They also have Al Horford. They have Peyton Pritchard. They have, guys like Xavier Tillman. All that they were able to acquire at a either discounted price or drafted, or something like that. And the players that they have in place, they have their bird rights. Their 2 superstars that are making the most money, they drafted those guys. That's why their team can afford to bring themselves a 3-star model. They didn't just bring themselves a 3-star model like the Lakers or the Suns or the last year's Nets were trying to do. They already had certain mainstays in place that would allow them to afford to do so responsibly by making it so that they can afford the higher tier role players that the Lakers will not be able to afford in this situation. So that means that you can try to be Boston, but it's not going to equate to you being Boston because you don't necessarily have that benefit of having those things already in place that are on affordable contracts. Anthony Davis you didn't draft. LeBron James you didn't draft. You know what I mean? It's like that really hurts you in this situation, given the fact that they just simply cost more. They eat more of your cap because of it. So, and the flexibility is not necessarily there because of it. So, the Golden State Warriors were able to benefit from that as well. They had Clay drafted. They drafted Steph. They drafted Dre. So they could bring themselves KD and afford KD. And then they still had Deshaun Livingstons and all these other guys that they could afford to keep because their mainstay, the super duper stars, were people they actually drafted. So when you mortgage your picks, this is what people need to understand. Like the reason why these things work is because those players were initially drafted there. They didn't forego the opportunity to develop players. They were able to luck out, and those players managed to develop to their highest point, and then they were able to bring themselves other stuff because it's affordable. If you don't have that already in place, you going out trying to do the 3-star model is going to equate to you being Phoenix, Brooklyn, us when we had Russ. It doesn't work. So that's what I'm trying to express to people, man. I understand that the going the depth route puts you in a position to where you're relying upon more lesser guys. But the reality is you're going to be relying upon less guys if you get the 3-star model. Bring them to you. What ends up usually happening, especially if you have an older core like we do, is you're going to miss some games with those core. Those 2 are going to miss games. And you're going to find yourself relying upon that other guy that you just brought in. Well, guess what? He's playing with guys that are not very good because of what we already described. So and not to mention, how healthy do you expect them to play when they're not used to playing a star's role? Because remember, we're bringing in people that are lesser guys, less sought after guys with a lot of mileage, maybe even rookies in situations who are not very high draft picks because we don't have them to receive them. So you're asking guys who are not built for more to play more in the event that you have any injury issues. In an 82-game schedule with older players, you're going to have injury issues. So bring yourself the 3-star model for you, Lakers, means that you're likely going to have one of those stars on the floor playing with a bunch of other guys that are not very good, and you're hoping that all of that can stay upright. And it's not many times where you're going to try that and they do. It's not, especially if you bring yourself a Trae Young, short guy, or Donovan Mitchell who's having issues with his health right now. It's just, you're asking for it. You're absolutely asking for it. You bring yourself a Zach LaVine. How healthy you expect Zach LaVine to stay in that situation? I mean, it's just, if you know these people aren't going to be able to stay upright in regards to doing this, why even go down the path to begin? The mistake is made when you start doing it, when you dream it up and then put it out there. It ain't made once the health falls apart. You're supposed to be able to foresee that. And so that's my thing. I don't think the Lakers can afford to go to 3-star model because they don't have those other mainstays in place. And as a result, they're going to be relying upon people who are not prepared to be relied upon in most situations. So that's what needed to be articulated. I've said this a million times, but I'm still hearing people talk about they want to get the 3-star model going, and I just don't think they understand why they're not fit for that. As Laker fans, we're not constructed properly to be able to bring that in and have that dynamic that Boston has. You got to know why Boston has that dynamic in place. Why Golden State was able to actually do that KD trade and be successful. If they didn't have those players already drafted, they wouldn't be able to have the role players around them to keep those guys healthy. It takes role players to give your stars a breather. You can't just run people out there for 40 minutes a game. Look at the Knicks. It doesn't work. And if you want to use the Denver Nuggets as an outlier for why it did work, you got to understand how many times it didn't work in the presence of it working that one time. The Denver Nuggets are a team who's had trouble with their core staying healthy. That's why Jokic's only been to the finals one time. How many other years have you seen Jamal Murray stay healthy? We know if Porter's back. That team is not constructed to be successful in the way that they were when they won the championship very often. But in the event you want to use them as an example, what you also got to look at is the fact that they drafted all of those players too. So I could argue they haven't really done the greatest job of putting superstar talent around Jokic because they drafted Porter, because they drafted Murray. They should be able to get more. So, this is one of those situations where they're shallow by choice. I think it's actually kind of poor GMing that they are a shallow basketball team, to be honest with you. They should have a better bench than they do. So it's just, we can look and say, oh, they got stars, that's how you win. But if you don't see the quality role players behind those stars and know how to actually make sure that you have them, then you're not going to have the dynamic of the team that has the 3 stars because you can't bring yourself the quality that makes those stars likely able to stay healthy, likely able to keep good quality talent on the floor in the event 1 or 2 of them fall to injury. So, I just think people, I see stars. We can win that way. No, you cannot, because you don't know what actually made it so that they could put all that together and it worked. If you don't look at the foundation and you just look at what the leaves are showing you, then you're going to assume that without the strong foundation that they have, you can do what they do. You don't see the roots that are dug into the ground that make them as strong as they are. You just see what's out there looking all pretty and nice, and you just want to go ahead and bring that to yourself. You bring that stuff to you, and you're going to fall to the ground. It's not going to work. This is why Matt Ishbia is such a terrible owner. This is why Josiah is such a terrible owner, because they looked at all that shiny stuff and said, ooh, I could do that, not thinking about the roots. And what the foundation is that actually allowed it for all that to actually succeed. Or they didn't care about it. Either way, they suck at what they do. And so that's what I'm trying to keep us from being. Bad at what we do. Get the foundation. This is why resetting is the best path forward in order for you can afford to put together a Golden State, put together a Celtics. You draft well, you develop the players up to what they're going to be, and then you add to that based on the fact that you can now afford to because those players are drafted. If you're too afraid to draft and develop, then you will never actually get that dynamic. If you're constantly mortgaging all your picks, you're never going to have that dynamic. You're going to have the fluff of pretty leaves, but the foundation is trash, and it's going to equate to your teams being hurt most of the time. Most of the time. Like I said, every once in a while there's an outlier. It may work out. Denver, shallow team, work out. Maybe there's also an outlier where you look at this process and say we didn't develop very well, and the guys turned out to be busts, and we weren't able to actually get off the ground. But at the end of the day, this gives you the more likelihood of success when you do things the right way. The right way. And if you can't identify what the right way is, then you've already failed. You know what I mean? So that's really what it comes down to. I understand the idea of why people want what Celtics have, what Golden State had, and they look and say, why can't I do that? But if they can't answer that question, then they shouldn't be trying to do what those people do. If you can't answer why you cannot do it, if you don't understand the context for which their success came from, then you're going to fail in attempting to try to mimic what they are. So that's pretty much my point of view, man. I think teams need to get wise. I think teams need to not be too afraid to do things the right way and take the time to take the risks necessary for things to possibly work out the right way, because you're going to take a risk either way. You may not see it that way, but that's your flaw. That doesn't take away from the fact that those risks are real. So that's pretty much what I got to say, man. Do things the right way. This is why I want us to trade Anthony Davis, LeBron James for picks, so that we can start over and then have the ability to dig some roots into the ground so that we can have these pretty leaves that everybody wants. But as long as people will continue to mortgage their future, the chances of them being able to rebuild when it's time becomes less and less likely that it's going to be able to be done. That's why you can't tank next year, because you didn't mortgage picks away. That's why you can't tank in 27, because you mortgage picks away. And what's your answer? To mortgage more picks? Bring yourself another superstar and hope he stays healthy with a bunch of scrubs around him? The 40-year-old LeBron James? I mean, that doesn't even look like it's going to work. And a rookie coach, that doesn't even look like it's going to work. On paper, they look like trash. So you know it's going to be bad when you put it out there. So people need to understand what the risks are for everything that they do. Not just for what it is that looks a little scary because it can go wrong and it can make us suck right now. And right now is what everybody's after. Success, microwave success. That is not how the Celtics got to where they are. They've been developing this core that they got and putting this pieces, plug and pieces for the last 7-8 years. They're finally getting over the hump. So if you're trying to do what they did and you think it's coming to you overnight, boy, did you misunderstand what it is that what's actually in front of you. Being microwave about building the NBA team is going to leave you with a poor result. That's what I know. That's what I've known for a very long time now. Anytime a team went the microwave route, they ended up falling short. So that's pretty much it, man. If the Lakers are serious about making their organization as great as they need to be, they're going to take the time and take the risk necessary to put themselves in a position to have strong roots. Otherwise, you're the Nets, you're the Suns. That's it. BDF 44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.